Young people's experiences, ideas, choices, and preferences help shape the future of cities. This episode of the Bright Young Minds show on Future Cities Africa is with Chuma Mbambo, an urban planner with experience working at the South African Cities Network and also as a smart cities research consultant at the World Bank. Chuma believes that the interventions required to spatially and economically transform South African human settlements, particularly previously disadvantaged black areas, lie in the hands of the youth. Kuma, welcome. It's great to have you on the show. Can you give us a brief introduction to your career, your background, and some of the work that you've done for the World Bank?
Hi, Dan, and thank you for inviting me to have this conversation with you this morning. I'm an urban planner. I've done most of my work in South Africa. My home city is Durban, and I was inspired. Being an urban planner, learning more about South Africa, our spatial structure, and everything really kind of made me reflect. Having been someone who grew up in a township, what that means, how do we transform our cities, how do we transform, South Africa as is to be, a better space for everyone to enjoy. So I've really been inspired by that mostly in the work that I've done. I started off, working obviously with the South African Cities Network as a junior researcher there. I did a lot of township studies there, and that realizing being in that space that most of our townships are under research kind of inspired me to do more of the work around, township marginalized areas in South Africa that need their attention. Because if majority of the people live in these areas in South Africa, then those are the areas where we should make the most impact if we really want to get our country to be, what it's supposed to be. So I was very inspired by, township research, and now having to work with the World Bank, being a researcher there, working a lot with South African cities. We work particularly with Ethekwini municipality, the city of Joburg and Tshwane, um, and just helping, I guess, those cities formulate strategies, define what it means to be smart, because that's also very ambiguous at this point. But how do we make the smart city approach very meaningful for a South African country? And how do we use it to resolve our own challenges, and how do we make that work for us as a country? So that's been a very exciting journey.
How exactly do you define a smart city, especially in the African context?
Smart cities for me is in the most basic form, improving efficiency. So making our systems, our processes more efficient so that we address our challenges very quickly, but also eliminating certain redundancies. There's certain things that we just do repeatedly that we don't necessarily need in our day-to-day, running of the city. So it's basically that creating those efficiencies. And obviously, we use technology as a key driver of that. Although technology is not really an inspiration. The real inspiration, obviously, behind creating these efficiencies is improving livelihoods. And for me, smart cities, especially in the South African context, is just putting the citizen at the center of it all and asking ourselves the questions: how can we make people's lives better? How can we improve? How can we do this quicker? And how do we do this? We have limited resources in the city, in terms of finances, in terms of, human resources, even. And there's a lot going on. So it's like, how do we best coordinate and how do we best make things work together in the most efficient way possible, given the resources that we have, that it makes the most impact to improving people's lives. So, I mean, we obviously have a whole ecosystem when it comes to smart cities. You're looking at issues related to governance, we're looking at finance, we're looking at safety related issues. And I can obviously go on and on. There's a lot of challenges, energy in the country as well. So it's basically just looking into all these sectors and saying, what do we need to improve? And what do we really not need? Maybe there's some policies in some places that are just, blocking our progress in terms of just adapting better to the situation that we're in. So smart cities is basically that, thinking a whole lot smarter, in terms of how do we get to where the cities, or how do we get to the urban spaces of the country that we envision, um, you know, and eliminating all the stuff that we don't need. But obviously, like I said, technology being the means to an end and not necessarily the motivation behind, what we're actually doing. So yeah, for me, that's kind of the basic, view of smart cities, especially what it means for us as a developing country, South Africa. Yeah.
So, where exactly are we on this smart city journey? What is holding back progress, and where is progress actually happening?
There are a lot of pockets of success, I would say, especially in the cities that we're working with. You have, and most of the cities started their smart city journeys quite a long time ago, even though the terminology may have not been smart cities at the time, but the direction was exactly that. So we see a lot of pilot projects in the cities that are happening. For example, Etegini implemented their own independent broadband network. You have the city of Joburg being one of the few cities that actually have a smart city strategy, which is also really great. You have the city of Tshwane that have various online platforms that have, assisted residents in, managing their municipal documents better or managing, municipal services better. Excuse me. So you have all these small projects that, have been done in various sectors in the city, but they almost haven't been done in a coordinated way that it makes the most impact. And that's currently one of the challenges that the cities are currently working with right now, is that obviously one system affects the other. If we have, for example, if they have an online governance platform where most, departments can feed into each other and actively communicate between internally and also with the citizen, that would obviously make a huge difference in how, we run things in the city. But just the coordination around that has been kind of been a challenge for the cities. And one of the reasons for that is because there's a there seems to be a resistance to change. So there's just a traditional thing, the way that things have always been done, and don't really like change, or maybe they don't believe in the change. We're not quite sure what it is, especially if that is not backed up by city leadership. So if there's no leader that's kind of a driving force to say, look, this is the direction that we're supposed to be taking, and let's all hold hands together and adapt to this change. Nobody's going to want to go that direction voluntarily. People are quite comfortable with where they are. Maybe they don't believe in the approach. Maybe there's been a lot of approach that have been tried before and they're like, what's the difference with this one? So there really is a resistance to change from the administrative side of the city up to the city leadership, it seems. And it doesn't help with our country. Our municipal local government structures are very volatile. So you might get the buy-in of one leader today, and then tomorrow the leader is not there, and you have to start over because with every leader comes a new priority, and now you have to rebrief. And maybe that's not a priority for the incoming leader; they have something else in their mind. So it's almost like there's also that in the way. So the continuity of the smart city work is always threatened by these ever changing, environments in the city environment. And that obviously affects, us moving forward with the approach. And also with funding, most of the cities will obviously, mention this as one of the major challenges. New solutions need funding one way or the other, and they need to be backing. And again, leadership plays a crucial role in that, especially in the decision making process of what do we end up implementing. And just besides that, even when we say implement smart city processes, I think what people don't understand as well is that part of being smart is being able to adapt over time. So people think that we're just working towards a destination of a sort, but also a huge part of being smart is saying, once we thought we were going a particular direction, but if it's not working, then let's find a way to quickly regroup and find a way that does. So the idea of just not being able to adapt quickly or not being able to adapt at all is definitely hindering the cities in terms of making the required changes to just, achieve, the smart phase or the smart status eventually, which is what we're all, looking towards achieving. So yeah, I think in a nutshell, those are the major, very general challenges that I would say the cities are facing.
Kuma, if you had a magic wand and you could solve this visionary leadership challenge and having to start over each time? How would you do that?
When it comes to, say, developing strategies, for example, unfortunately, our strategies have just become documents sometimes that just sit and almost mean nothing. And it's almost like the decisions that are actually made for the city sometimes just lie in the hands of certain individuals, unfortunately. So for me, if the strategies, especially if the city, if there's been an all of government governance decision that a city is supposed to take a particular direction, I think the strategies, especially if a lot of expertise, a lot of time has gone into thinking them out, there should be a little bit more, I think they could be a little bit more binding in terms of being just policy documents for the cities, especially in providing a particular direction. Because if the cities are constantly going in different direction every time there's change in leadership, then we're almost going to get nowhere slowly, I would feel. So I think for me, that's almost the most basic, start for that, just to, stick to the plan, so to speak. I mean, it's one thing if the plan doesn't work, sure. But if there's a plan in place and we're going a particular direction, every leader that comes in should be there to steer, you know, to the same direction or whatever the city was, going, instead of, coming up with something new, because we have seen that the changes can be quite, rapid. It's no longer just a 5 year um, term anymore. It can be even shorter. So changing every time kind of doesn't work. So I think that would be the start point. Just, stick to the plan as much as possible.
Are there actually cities getting it right and leading by example with regards to implementing smarter city solutions? And can you share some examples?
For me, and also these are some of the examples that we make in the quarterly publications that we have with the World Bank, called the Smart City.za bulletins, where we basically talk with global experts that work with us in the South African work and the expertise that they kind of bring in. So one of the examples that they made, for example, for the safety sector, if you look at Colombia, which was, known to be, one of the most dangerous cities in the world at some point, Colombia kind of broke down, and they also took a smart city approach, but they broke down the issue to, okay, it's not just a, policing issue. We don't need the police, we don't need the army necessarily, but let's start it at ground level. They started looking at their safety issue from a community perspective and from a family perspective to say, well, safety is a community issue, and we should get everybody involved from the ground up in terms of fighting the safety issue. And right now, they're not even in the top 100 of the most dangerous cities in the world because of the work and the very different approach that they took. And again, yes, there was a use of technology, maybe CCTV footage and all that, but really it was the community of Colombia that was driving, that smart city approach, and because they were doing it for themselves. And again, if you look at the issue of Kenya and their load shedding issues, they had load shedding not so long ago, maybe around early 2000s. Very same issues, a very same situation that we're at now. But one of their key policies into eradicating their load shedding was approaching load shedding as a social issue. Because again, they said, well, look, there's a whole ecosystem that's affected if we don't fix the energy, issue. We have our economy that's dying. Our safety is going to be impacted. It's also going to impact education. How are people going to learn if there's no electricity? And they started approaching it from a social perspective. And now they don't even have a fraction of the load shedding that we experience as a country. So I think I make these examples specifically to highlight that, Smart, cities, smart cities are more about the cause or the motive and less about the technology I mean, obviously using data, and it helps to, to identify the key points, where should we focus ourselves. But the most important thing is the motive. What's motivating us to achieve something? And let's start from there, basically, to point us towards that direction. Just because we're taking smart cities doesn't mean that now we have to do something foreign. It's just using a different approach to, basically try and resolve the same old problems that we've always had. So yeah, I think those are really cool examples for me that I've heard from abroad, especially countries that we can relate to. just to say that there really isn't any, it's nothing magical, it's not rocket science that they came up with, but it's really just focusing your issues to what you really want to achieve as a country.
Kuma, what role does the youth need to play in spatially and economically transforming South Africa's human settlements?
Yeah, I think every time people talk about the youth, I get very excited because I feel like young people just bring a certain energy, you know. We're young, we want to try out new things. I think if you have been part of a particular system for very long, you can get easily discouraged in terms of the things that you can and cannot do. And you know, the advantage that the youth has is just this energy to be able to try and try again and try again until it works out. So for me, and this is why I particularly believe that our solutions are in the hands of the youth, is because the youth has the energy and has the hope to you know, transform the country and has the vision. I'm still young myself, but there's even younger people that are doing amazing things, unimaginable things. And it's just crazy what, you know, the youth is able to achieve. So I think the youth kind of brings that energy of, you know, let's change if we need to change. Let's try again if we need to try again. And maybe let's try something completely new. And I think that's just the advantage of the youth, or having youth, especially in the planning space, is just to constantly ask questions if necessary. Do we need that? Or maybe if we are using a particular thing, can we use it differently? And just that inquisitive, that very new, that very fresh energy, that is exactly what the youth kind of brings to the table, and why I truly believe that the youth should be involved in making more decisions, especially when it comes to our living spaces.
In conclusion, do you have any advice for the youth to remain hopeful of the future?
Very difficult for me to answer as a young person who's also just constantly trying to obviously just navigate, you know, the space. But I can definitely say to young people, there is a way. I always, you know, believe in this thing that where there's a will, there's a way. And we, like I said, have the advantage of, you know, just having that energy to always just look, to seek and find, you know. So I think young people shouldn't stop seeking. Young people shouldn't stop asking questions. Young people shouldn't stop proposing solutions. We are, I think, the most creative people we can ever find. And it is exactly us that's needed in the world. I just wish we believe that more, that we are exactly what is needed in the world, because we get very timid, very scared to sit in certain spaces and express ourselves. But I would really encourage the youth to do exactly that, you know, especially in challenging status quo, challenging exactly how things have been done, bringing forth new solutions. It has never been a better time to present something new as a country. We need it. And it's exactly the time for young people to, you know, take up that space and, you know, make those contributions towards, you know, just changing our country and making it, you know, even better than it is.
A special thank you to Chuma Mbambo for this insightful conversation on the Bright Young Minds show on Future Cities Africa. Youth is the future of African cities.